Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tight Lines Podcast. I'm your host, and my name is Tyler Plackey. Quick introduction into what this show is going to be for you all. So, obviously, this is episode numero uno, number one. And this is going to be a fishing podcast that is going to cover a variety of fishing techniques, species, waters, pretty much anything and everything fishing will be covered in here. From fly fishing up in Montana along, some of those rivers and creeks to saltwater fishing out in the Gulf of Mexico to fishing farm ponds and pretty much anything else. So, with that in mind, like I said, my name is Tyler Plackey. A little bit about me. I am a 25-year-old angler in central Indiana. I primarily fish creeks, rivers, and ponds and lakes. I do not have any experience with saltwater fishing, but hopefully this summer, hint, hint, wink, wink, that is going to change. So, I wanted to take episode one and cover something I thought would be really fun. Hopefully, get you guys an introduction to me a bit. And I want to talk about the idea of how many combos is too many combos. As a bass fisherman myself, that's my primary species is bass and panfish. I also do enjoy to fish for catfish and carp. And I've done some walleye fishing as well, but we'll get into all this stuff as the show continues on into newer episodes. Um, but on the topic of just as a general multi-species angler, how many combos is too many combos? And we're going to talk about my combos and what I've got and why I think I'm doing just fine, contrary to what people tell me. And they say that, Tyler, you have too many combos. And I say, well, that's okay. Um, so as someone who likes to, I always like getting new things. I'm really into what's new and what's great out there. Because of ADHD, I like to always get new things and try something new. So I do have a lot of stuff, and that's okay. But we're going to run through my combos and why I think, it is okay to have a lot of combos. So, running through my multiple fishing combos, we're just going to go kind of in order of how I've acquired them. So oldest to newest. So I started fishing seriously about 3 years ago now. Until my first I fished growing up, and so my first combo that I started using when I got into fishing a little bit more seriously a couple years ago was one of my old push buttons from being a kid. I have a Zebco push button. It's a Zebco Roam, and then I had just an old Zebco rod on it. I actually have two of them. So I have a Zebco Roam for one of them, and then a Zebco. It's a different type of push button. It's one of their more expensive ones. Let me look it up real quick. But that one's also on a Zebco, like a 5.6 ultralight push button style rod. Super super flimsy, super cheap. But I mean, obviously to get you into the fishing game at super super cheap, there's nothing wrong with that. Fishing, just like everything else, is super expensive anymore, and so trying to find decent deals and decent gear at a good deal is tough. So yeah, so the one, like I said, is a Zebco Roam, and then the other one, I'm trying to find it, but it's not showing up from where I bought it. So I may not be able to show you guys that one, I guess, or tell you what it is. I can always, that's okay. But it's a higher end Zebco push button. It was like $80 or $90. I only bought it for $40. It's not a deal. Trust me, I spent $90 on a push button reel. So those were my first two that I had. Loved using those. Had a ton of fun with them. Caught plenty of fish. Was able to throw crankbaits and just little worms and just kind of get into the concept of fishing. Get comfortable, handling fish and handling normal hooks and treble hooks, and just understanding how to treat a fish properly. So that's why those two combos were good for me. I still occasionally like to bring them out and use them on, if I'm throwing worms on a bobber and a little bait hook. Or if I'm throwing, I've got what's called a Kelly's striper, which is like this pre-rigged 3-hook soft plastic worm that I absolutely love. I had them growing up; they're a ton of fun to throw. So I'll occasionally bring them out for that. But other than that, they kind of just sit up in the garage, and they're just there because that's what I started learning on, and those are my first poles. So you got to keep those. The next thing I bought would be a Zebco Dock Demon, and the reason I bought this is I knew I wanted to at some point be able to start trying something other than a push button. So I always thought that the spinning reels were fun. So I got the Zebco Dock Demon and the spinning combo. It's like a 3-foot or a 2-foot 8 inch little spinning reel with like 4 pound line that came on it from Zebco. Bought on Amazon for like $19. It was just fun to have something different to throw. And that actually ended up becoming last year when I got into like wade fishing, wading through local creeks around here. And we're not, real quick, we do not spot burn on this podcast. There's no spot burning elsewhere, so we're not going to spot burn on here. If you want to see where I fish at, you can go check out my YouTube channel, Tyler Plackey Fishing. So I got that, and that got me through some creek fishing, some ultralight, some really light stuff, little tiny MEP spinners, little minnows, it's real tiny like 1/16 to 1/32 jig heads. Got me kind of into all that stuff, and it got me comfortable using a spinning setup. Learning how to open and close the bail and how to throw it properly and how to control drag. Um, it taught me a little bit about fishing with a spinning combo. So next thing I got into at that point is I had gone out with my buddy Matt about 2 years ago, and we went carp fishing up off the Illinois River. And at that point, I realized, hey, it's fun to catch big fish. I'd been fishing mostly just ponds at that point, and actually, that's all I'd been fishing was ponds at that point, little like neighborhood ponds and apartment ponds and stuff like that. So I wasn't catching anything more than about a pound, pound and a half. And so we went up. We were supposed to go catfishing actually, but his dad told us that the river was all set up for carp and it was looking real good for carp. So we went out and went carp fishing for 2 days, out on his boat, and had an absolute blast with that. And so I was like, hey, I want to keep doing this with Matt and start learning to do this by myself. Catfish, carp fish, all sorts of bigger game fish that are in rivers and lakes and everything around here. And so I went out and I bought a larger size setup. At the time, I still had no idea how to ever throw a bait casting setup, and so I went on and on my limited budget because I was just out of college, bought a Cast King like 8 foot progressive glass spinning rod with a Cast King I think 5,000 size Spartan reel. Spent like 80 or $85 on them total. Put 65 pound braid on it, and it's been a blast to fish with. Caught plenty of fish on them. Caught mostly bass on it just because I haven't had much luck yet with carp and catfish on it, but I've caught bass on it. I was actually out catfishing today, and I was getting some bites. I'm in the process of learning catfishing still. So, and this is a podcast to not make me look like I'm the greatest angler on earth, because I'm not, and we're gonna learn stuff together, and we're gonna have a ton of fun. And so, yeah. So that was my next combo. That was combo number 4 that I had gotten. And it was, like I said, a Cast King off Amazon. It's the Amazon brand, I think. It was just a big spinning rod and reel with big braid, and so I could now, at this point in my mind, I have push buttons for my everyday use. I got a spinning rod for my everyday use with the Dock Demon, and then for creek fishing, and then I've also got, if I'm going after something bigger, I've actually got something to fight that with. So now I feel like I'm starting to cover my bases here. So that was in summer 2023. So I go into winter and into spring of 24. And at this point, I'm starting to be like, okay, I actually like really want to get into fishing. Like, I'm really liking fishing. I've spent all winter learning about fishing, watching fishing YouTube videos, and thinking about fishing and wanting to go fishing. So what's next in my mind at that point is going to be, you would think, to go out and buy like a 7 foot spinning combo. Wrong. I decided that was not for me. So I went ahead and at that point went out and bought a bait caster. Excuse me. I went down to my academy in Greenwood, Indiana, and bought an Ebu Garcia Vengeance. It was a 7 foot medium heavy fast bait casting combo. It's the gray rod with the black reel, all plastic, not an ounce of metal in that thing. It was like $49.99. Brought it home, put on 17 pound monofilament, and went outside and thought, I'm about to be the greatest fisherman in the world, and I'm going to be great at this. And I went to throw it and backlashed it. And so I then spent the next, month figuring out, and perfecting and learning and really fine tuning my, just the ability to cast without backlashing. It literally took me probably a month of just like watching YouTube videos, going out and practicing it in my yard with, a half-ounce weight on the end of the line, and then, a swivel to keep in place, and that was it. I wasn't throwing hooks or anything. I was standing in my yard just practicing casting. So I fished that for a while. and eventually finally figure out how to throw a bait caster and how to work a bait caster a little bit. And then that's when I was able to start fishing and had a ton of fun. About that time we moved places, moved to a place with what is now much better fishing that I found, and at that point said, okay. And at that point I also found another podcast online. It's the Tackle Talk podcast with Andrew Hayes. If you guys haven't watched or listened to that, after this episode, of course, go ahead and check that one out. I love his podcast. He's taught me so much about fishing. But at that point, he started talking to me about the art of finesse fishing. And so at that point, I decided, you know what? I do want to get into some finesse fishing. So I went out and bought a spinning combo finally at this point. I went up to my Sportsman's Warehouse and on a deal found a Lew's Mock Smash. It's a 7-foot medium fast spinning combo. And right now I have 10-pound Yo-Zuri braid on it. And I just tie it straight on. I don't tie a leader. The water's not uber clear here. It's a little murky still, so you can get away. They're not going to be line shy. I have not had any problems with fish being line shy with braid. And that is another story for another day. But started fishing this. At this point, it was trick worms and Texas rigs and craws and Ned rigs and finesse size spinner baits and learning the lighter side of fishing. Learning how do I throw smaller stuff but still catch big fish, and how do I work finesse? If they're not sitting here biting a big chatterbait. Okay, well, how can I downsize and make a different presentation? So that's when I got the Lew's Mock Smash 7-foot. So now I'm up to 6 combos, right? So you're thinking, man, he's got a lot of combos. Just you wait. So then at that point, that fall, so last fall, I went down to Academy, was walking around, and they had a rod on a deal. And it was a Daiwa AirDX 7-foot medium heavy fast casting rod. And for me, what I liked about it is it was rated from a 1/2 ounce to a 1.5 ounce lure compared to the Vengeance, which was rated up to I think 3/4 of an ounce. So it threw double the weight. And I understand you can throw above the recommended weight as long as you're not like tripling the weight. But I had at this point wanted to start throwing some bigger lures and wanted to try some power fishing. So I went ahead and bought this rod, and I pulled that Vengeance reel off off the first combo and threw it on there and started power fishing. I started throwing big coal shads and larger size swim baits. And I also feel like I had the ability to, my ponds have a ton of weeds in them and a ton of grass. And so I feel like I was able to rip through that better and to pull fish out of it better. I was able to kind of horse the fish if I needed to, compared to just digging in and me just being stuck. So I was doing good on that, and then at Christmas time, I went ahead and got a reel for that. So I put the Vengeance back on the Vengeance rod, so that combo's all back together. And I went ahead and put on a Abu Garcia Max Pro reel. It's the white one with like the gold coloring to it. I think they sell anywhere between $80 and $100 right now. I think I got it for $80. Went ahead and put 20-pound mono on it. I'm not a huge braid fan on casting gear still. I like it on spinning gear. I'm not a huge casting gear braid fan. Not sure why. I like the way that mono plays. I like a really well put together piece of monofilament. It's easier to tie. It's easier to work with. The line memory sometimes helps you out, where braid can kind of go everywhere and get stuck because it's got no memory, where mono doesn't. So, but I went ahead and put that on. It's in like a 7.2 to 1 reel. And that kind of became my like all-purpose reel. That was something that I could throw swim baits on, I could throw chatterbaits, I could kind of jig with. I could kind of throw a little bit of everything that was, a decent size lure. I obviously couldn't throw, Ned rigs on it. But, for normal everyday fishing, it kind of covered all my bases. And so at that point, I had learned about the beauty that was topwater. I started frogging a little bit on this rod and reel. And so I was like, okay. And sorry, I had started frogging on that Vengeance reel. Darn, that's crazy. So I had known that I had wanted a some sort of frogging setup, and me not knowing much, I figured who really cares? You can just buy whatever bait caster and make it a frogging setup. So I went out and went on to Facebook Marketplace, and this is still over winter, going into 25. I bought a 7-foot Abu Garcia Max X combo. Bought it for like $40. Put 30-pound braid on it, which because I didn't want to throw too heavy braid on. I still had some left over, like 65 from that casting, but I just figured that was a little overkill at the time, and we'll get into that in a minute. But this, funny enough, if you know something about fishing, you'll laugh at me for this because I didn't know this at the time. I had the reel was a 6.4 to 1 reel, so not ideal for. It was slower than my everyday combo, so it was not the ideal reel to have on this rod, especially for this setup. But this setup, got me learning a little bit about top water. Got me learning how to walk a spook, how to walk a frog, how to control a buzz bait, just stuff like that. Taught me, about the timing of setting hooks on frogs and on different top waters, and so it got me, started into it, and that is since because of some newer stuff that I've gotten, that has since become my my crankbait rod because it's 6.4 to 1, so 7 foot. It's short enough and slow enough that I can run it more as a crankbait rod, and so that's what I'm going to use it for now. So now we get to talk about my last three that I have. So after that, I wanted to get more into ultralight because I had gone up and gone fishing up in northern Indiana and had really liked ultralight and had learned about the fun of fishing underpowered. And what I mean by that is, having to work the drag and having to fight a fish for more than 8 seconds and not just pulling the fish to the surface and reeling him across the water and throwing him on the bank. Actually fighting the fish and actually having a little bit of fun with it. So I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and found a Daiwa Samurai X2. This is a spinning combo. It's an ultralight spinning combo in a 5/6 length. It was normally $30. I got on a deal for $20. Put some 4-pound Yo-Zuri monofilament on it, and I've just had an absolute blast with that thing. I've thrown, you can throw bobber and worm on there. You can throw, like I said, that Kelly Striper, finesse spinner baits, little tiny Ned rigs. You can throw like juvie craws from Great Lakes Finesse. There's all sorts of fun stuff you can throw on this, and I've had an absolute blast with this thing so far. This is also going to become my creek fishing rod, so I can get away from the Dock Demon. I enjoy the Dock Demon. I'm going to hold on to it. I don't like to get rid of my fishing gear if I don't have to. I may donate it at some point. We'll see. But this has become my gear. I like it. It's a little bit smoother. It's a Daiwa. I mean, it's not a high-end Daiwa. It's like $20. But, it does the job for me and what I want to do. So it's been good for me. And then finally comes down to the last two. And so now you're thinking, okay, he's kind of seems like he's got everything, right? At this point, I've got a top, at this point in my life, right? So this is before these last two combos. I have the Daiwa Air DX with the Abu Garcia Max Pro. That's kind of my do everything rod. I got the Abu Garcia Max X, which I kind of use as my top water, even though it's not built for top water. I've got the Vengeance, which I kind of use for just like flipping and pitching and stuff like that. Got the Mach Smash and the spinning combo, which I use for anything spinning gear. And I've got my Daiwa Samurai X2, which is also ultralight spinning. Got my push buttons for fun, my Dock Demon for fun, and then got my workhorse, my big game fishing setup, my casting spinning gear that's catfish and carp and big fish like that. So you think I have all my bases covered, right? Wrong. So what did I get? So I was listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. This is probably 4 or 5 weeks ago now, and I had heard on there he was talking about local deals because of tariffs, and deals that he had found that were good. And on Amazon at the time and I had thought about upgrading. I'd pulled some cash together, worked hard, made a little bit of cash, and I knew I wanted to buy myself something nice. And he had talked about Dobyns and Dobyns rods, and he's talked about Dobyns. He's talked about Fenwick a lot. He's talked about St. Croix and Duckett, and all these little bit nicer brand rods. And I was like, I'm ready to, I think, branch out into something a little bit nicer, a little bit fancier for myself. Doesn't have to be crazy, but just something a little bit fancier. So I decided I was going to settle on a Dobyns Maverick because they had normally $99, pushed into $119 now, I believe, with all the tariffs and everything. But they were on sale for $50, or for I think they're $54.99 a piece on Amazon. And so I was like, man. And so I go on and I figure out which one I want, and I'm like, and then I click on it and it's got an extra coupon. So I ended up buying 2 rods that day, which probably wasn't a fantastic choice, but it is what it is. And I bought they're both Dobyns Mavericks. They're both 7.3. One was a heavy fast, and if you don't know anything about Dobyns typically runs light compared to what they claim. So like a heavy fast runs like a medium heavy, and then I bought a mag heavy extra fast, which runs more like a heavy extra fast. So I bought both of those. I got them for like $98 off Amazon. So I mean, absolute deal on two Dobyns Maverick rods. Dobyns makes a great rod, great warranty on them, and they. So yeah. So what I bought them for, so the 7.3 heavy fast, I put a Daiwa Tatula CT on it. That's about $150 reel, and a 7.3 to 1 gear ratio. That became kind of my everyday rod. I've got 20-pound monofilament on it. It does everything I need to do. It throws swim baits. It throws lighter glide baits like a Berkley Nessie. It throws multi-jointed swim baits. It throws chatter baits. It throws big heavy worms and heavy Texas rigs. It throws swim jigs. It throws. I mean, like I said, it throws pretty much everything I need to throw. This has become my workhorse everyday combo, along with that Daiwa Air DX in the 7-foot. This is my 7.3 if I need a little extra casting distance or if I've just got open space. Definitely a nicer combo than what I had before. Not the other one was nice. I like all my combos. I use all my combos. But this kind of became like my, here's what I'm going to use combo. And I bring both of those with me at all times, the Daiwa and the Dobyns. So yeah, but then I was like, okay, I got this Mag Heavy extra fast, and this is pretty much a broomstick of a rod. There's hardly any bend. It's not sensitive at all, which means it's perfect for one thing and one thing only, and that is top water. And top water, and then I guess you could claim it to be good at like punching, but I don't know if it's sensitive enough for punching personally. I'm not a big punching fan. I don't really punch weed beds. I kind of, if I'm gonna float something down, I'm just gonna float down like a trick worm or something on light gear and have fun that way. So I bought this specifically for top water. I knew I wanted to get into top water, and I knew that Max X with the 6.4 to 1 gear ratio was just not cutting it anymore. So I went ahead and put on a Shimano SLX XT casting reel, bait caster reel on it in an 8.2 to 1 gear ratio, and I loaded that up with 65-pound braid from, I believe it was H2OX, which is the Academy brand of line. And I've caught some fish on it, and the line seems fine. It's good quality. But this became my true topwater reel. So I now have a true topwater big broomstick with a fast reel that's going to pick up line and pin the fish and really fight them. So, yeah, altogether I have right now that I could come together in my mind. I have 11 combos as a person with two hands. So, now we get to the point of how many combos is too many combos. And honestly, it depends on your budget. It depends on your budget and depends what you do, right? If you are someone who strictly puts a worm on a hook and throws a bobber above it with some split shots and does that, you might need two combos. So you can have two rods in the water. Depending on your state, you can have so many hooks in the water at a time. So, you might need two, though, right? But if you're someone who's really getting into fishing, I think how I did it was the right way. I kind of started off with some cheaper stuff and got into it because if I didn't like it, yeah, I'm out $50, but I'm only out $50 on that Abu Garcia Vengeance if I don't like, a casting combo. At that point, I learned it and figured it out, and so it was all good, and then I knew I could step up a bit. But, I kind of started cheap and then worked my way to more expensive. As you get more into, and this is more specific to bass fishing, but this can kind of work for other species. I'm not as in tune with other species as I am bass. Bass is my primary species, but I think throughout this podcast we're going to learn together a lot about different species and really have some fun that way. But as you get in deeper into fishing, you figure out more technique-specific combos. So now I've got, instead of having one combo that I just kind of do everything with, on that Air DX combo, I was literally, heck, you go back to that Abu Garcia Vengeance combo, that first one I bought for $50. I was literally throwing frogs, crankbaits, buzzbaits, jerk baits, swim baits, chatterbait, every type of combo, or every type of lure on this combo, which it's not bad for. That's kind of what a 7-foot medium heavy fast bait casting combo is for. It's supposed to be an all around workhorse. But was it as sensitive as my Dobyns Maverick? No. It was not. And, could I throw a trick worm on it? No, because I needed something lighter. And so you go to the Loose Mock Smash. And so as you become more technique specific and you get to be a better fisherman and you take more and takes up more of your time in a good way, or I guess for our significant others might be a bad way, but that's okay. Um, I don't know if there's such thing as too many combos unless you're just starting to buy things just to buy them. Um, Obviously there's no reason to just hoard fishing gear. But that, I've got 11. I use almost all of them within a 1 month period. The only ones I can honestly say that I have not used in the last 4 months is the Zebco Dock Demon and the Abu Garcia Vengeance. I just haven't picked up. Actually, that's a lot. I used the Vengeance. So the only one of my 11 I have not used in the last 6 months, and heck, probably in the last 3 months, is the Zebco Dock Demon. So I do use them all. And as long as you're using them and they're in good working order and you're taking care of them, I think there's no such thing as too many combos. You start looking at some of these pro fishermen guys that are out on their boats and they got, 35 combos with them. It's like, holy. But yeah, that is my whole spiel on how many combos is too many. My final answer is if it works for you and you're able to afford it and it fits into your budget and it's not a waste, I don't think there is such thing as too many combos. I at some point would love to start up, not now, it's going to be a while just because it gets expensive, but start upgrading to, higher end. I'd love to upgrade my Lose Mock Smash at some point to maybe, buy instead of $100 combo, buy a $150 St. Croix and then put on like a $150 reel and have a nice $300 spinning combo that's, much more sensitive and can feel every little bite compared to just some of the bigger bites and, really be something that can throw real ultralight and real finessey and have good control over. So there's always room to upgrade. There's always room to buy more stuff if you want. But yeah, so I don't think there's such thing as too many combos. It's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. Um, Not many of us are pro fishermen. If you are a pro fisherman and you're listening to this, reach out. Let's have you on the pod. But also, why are you listening to this? Because you know way more about fishing than me. But yeah, so how many combos? Too many combos? There's not. So that is today's episode, guys. These are going to be short episodes. I think we're going to try and keep them about 30 minutes unless we have some fun stuff coming, some special guests or some different types of episodes. Um, Upload schedule, I'm not really quite sure yet. I'm probably going to look at probably every Wednesday at 4 a.m. It's kind of my look. I think that's what the plan is going to be, just to have a regular upload schedule every week. But as I figure that out and finalize that, I will be sure to let you all know. Right now, we're just available on Spotify. I'm going to work on getting onto Apple and on iHeartRadio, onto YouTube, and at some point set up a YouTube or a Instagram page. But for now, if you want to check out anything I'm doing fishing wise, my YouTube and my Instagram are Tyler Plackey Fishing. It's TYLERPLACKEFISHING, Tyler Plackey Fishing. So be sure to check me out there. Be sure to subscribe to the show on here. Please be sure to comment down below, like the episode, give us a good rating. If you have any suggestions for upcoming topics, please be sure to comment that to me. You can DM me on Instagram. I would love to hear them. I'd love to get your guys' ideas. So thank you guys so much for listening to the first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you all next week.